that I've been trained and the way that I think a lot of people perceive medicine and health and how to keep yourself healthy and how your body works. I think it really is one of the most cutting edge revolutionary books that I've ever seen. So again, welcome to the Win-Win Women audience, and welcome also to our YouTube audience. I'm so glad you're here. Again, we are in the book 10% Human by Alana Collin, and today I'm going to highlight three very specific aspects of this chapter. So you're going to want to read the whole chapter, but I'm going to talk specifically about brain development, your libido, and happiness. And she gives three really cool scientific anecdotes and a little bit of evidence. You know, there's a lot more you could dive into that would go in greater depth about this information, but I think it's going to start you on a really cool path. So let's get started. She talks on page 93, for those of you that are following along, and I'm going to read three sections, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can do from a practical level to try and improve your microbiome so that you can improve this aspect. And again, the three aspects we're talking about today are brain development, libido, and happiness. So on page 93, she said, there was an experiment that opened the door to a new way of thinking. Gut microbes did not just alter physical health, but mental health as well. What's more, it seemed that the effects could begin in childhood if the gut microbiota were disturbed early on. Our brains go through an intensely concentrated period of development when we are babies and toddlers. At birth, we each have nearly our full allotment of around 100 billion nerve cells, neurons in our brain. But these are just the raw materials, like a pile of wooden planks. Building anything meaningful requires some careful joinery work using connections called synapses that bind the neurons together. A young child's experience dictates the synapses that are formed, as well as which are important enough to be reinforced and which are insignificant enough to discard. A toddler whose daily life is packed full of novel stimulations will form around 2 million synapses every second, each offering new potential for learning and development. Healthy brains need a careful balance between remembering and forgetting. So most of these new synapses will be discarded during childhood. As they say, it's use it or lose it, as with synapses at that age. And any that are not regularly reinforced will be pruned to leave a nice, tidy brain. If gut microbes can influence this critical period of our brain development in early life, this could support Ellen Bolt's idea that her son Andrew's autism was due to a gut infection. Regressive onset autism affects children before the age of 3, during the same period as the bulk of the brain development. This time frame also coincides with the establishment of a stable adult-like gut microbiota. Andrew's early antibiotic treatment for what appeared to be an ear infection would have disrupted that process, potentially allowing it to take over by neurotoxin producer Clostridium tetani. Clostridium tetani. That's the bacteria that causes tetanus. So that's just easier. We're just calling it the tetanus bacteria. Ellen hoped that giving Andrew further antibiotics might destroy the C. tetani bacteria, that tetanus bacteria she believed had infected him, halting the damage being done to his young brain. 2 days of profound calm followed Andrew's hyperactivity after beginning his treatment. It was a miracle, Ellen said. We got fewer weeks into the treatment and the light bulbs just started to come on. I started him on potty training. He was 4 years old, and I was able to complete that in a few weeks. He was understanding what I was saying to him for the first time in 3 years. Andrew became affectionate, responsive, and calm, and even learned to speak more than a few words he had picked up before he became ill. He would allow himself to be dressed, and what's more, he would not have eaten his way down the front of his t-shirt by the end of the day. The child psychologist prepared a report on Andrew's behavior during the antibiotic treatment, but Dr. Saunders hardly needed one. So profound were the changes. Spectacular though this improvement was, a sample size of 1, Andrew could never prove beyond a doubt that the source of autism lay in the gut. Fortunately, a microbiologist of formidable reputation had been brought in on Ellen's idea after the success of Andrew's antibiotic trial. Dr. Sidney Feingold had devoted his career to a huge subset of anaerobic bacteria that exist without oxygen. He was referred to in a paper written in celebration of his 90th birthday in 2012 as arguably the most influential investigator on anaerobic microbiology in the 20th century, or perhaps for all time. It was to this group of bacteria that members of the genus Clostridium, including Clostridium tenenti, belonged. With Feingold's scientific caliber and knowledge, Ellen's autism hypothesis was in good hands. And if you read the rest of the chapter, you see this journey and you see how giving an antibiotic for that one particular bacteria reversed her son's autism. Now, it wasn't as easy as just giving the antibiotic at that one time, because let's take a step back for a moment. Just for those of you who aren't going to read the chapter or who aren't going to get to that part, if it's a spoiler and you don't want to hear, then go ahead and stop the video. But as it turns out, when the antibiotic stopped, his autism returned. So we know that for a fact, well, I don't know, we assume, we'd like to conclude that the addition of that very dangerous bacteria into his system was at the root of his autism, and that without the antibiotic, he was going to have an overgrowth of that bacteria. Now, why did that happen? It happened because his microbiome was unbalanced. Unbalanced, the hypothesis goes, because of the die-off of so many good bacteria that he had in his body when he received antibiotics. The biggest challenge with antibiotics, and not that they're bad because they are life-saving in many, many cases, is that they're overused and they're probably killing off far too many good bacteria than we really want them to. And so the question for us as humans is, can we use antibiotics in a really safe way? And the question that I would like to put out to you is, are there already in nature antibiotic plants that can do the same function as an antibiotic, even better, and not kill off bad bacteria? I'd like to think so. And some of my favorites would include oregano, melissa, thyme, yarrow, pomegranate oil, black pepper. These essential oil aromatic plants give off amazing antiviral properties. Now, can I conclusively say that using these essential oils will help with autism, for example? I don't know. I do know that 20 years ago, when I started to work with young families and families who had children of autism, the one essential oil that really made a big difference in their life was thyme oil. Now, I didn't understand why until today. So sometimes we're introduced to something and we see the effects that are good, but we can't connect the dots. And I'm not even able to connect the dots today, but it is encouraging to me that 20 years later, reading this book, what I understood to be true in a very anecdotal situation where these people who had these children with autism were really, really seeing a much greater benefit from using thyme oil. And then to know that thyme oil is also killing off some bad bacteria in the microbiome, that to me gives me a lot of hope that there will be a planned answer to some of the common concerns that we have today that are being very heavily linked to your microbiome. So in the spirit of that, I want to talk a little bit about brain development and what I might recommend to you if you are an essential oil user or you're curious about using natural products. doTERRA has a blend for kids called Thinker. Now remember, our children's brains are developing at the most rapid pace between birth and 3 years old. I mean, it's probably actually not even fair to say birth, because birth is a random dot on a long line, right? It's like saying menopause. Menopause is 1 day, birth is 1 day. But we know that's not true when we talk about the progression of the human body, mind, and spirit. It really starts from conception all the way till death. And so just because we like to put these dots at certain points and give them names like birth and menopause, they really are just a very small blip on the entire scope of a human life. So those early years, we do want to feed the brain as much as we possibly can with good things. That's good human touch. That's a lot of love and reinforcing good, happy environment. That's giving a lot of love, attention, and support, grace, right? All of that is so important. Patience is important with young children. But let's talk about things that we can do from an essential oil standpoint. What essential oils would be really, really good for your brain as it's developing? And doTERRA put together this group of essential oils for young people, and one is called Thinker. Sounds to me like they were ahead of their time. And so all you need to do, whether it's you or your child, and this is not just for children, but it's safe for children, right? So it includes all of us and the littlest ones in your life. And what I love to do is I love to just roll these oils on my temples in a very gentle way, not pressing hard, and then go across the hemisphere of my forehead. Sometimes I even go like this. I also like to do this. Now, when my kids were little, I noticed that this motion, this sort of down motion along the bridge of the nose, was very soothing for them. And so I often recommend to people that when they're using essential oils to calm themselves, that they just do this sort of gentle motion. Okay. And then you can go out from there. And that's with the blend Thinker. And this is a way for you to actually enhance your skin microbiome. You're also going to start to breathe in the essential oil. So what do we do for that? We paint our fingertips. So I'm going to show you right here what I'm doing. I just like to paint my fingertips. And when I see the glistening oil on my fingers, then I know that I have enough. And then I just take my fingertips together, rub them, cup them over my nose. And then I always take whatever on the rest of my hand and I just apply it to the back of my neck. I just find this to be really, really soothing. And then I put it on my hands, which is very nurturing for the skin on your hands, which gets a lot of wear and tear, of course, in cleaning and working and just utilizing your hands. So if we look to that section of the book on pages 93 and 94 and 95, go ahead and grab your Thinker at the same time. And when you're reading this book, take some time to just think about what's going on and how it applies to the people that you know and the people in your life. And if you feel like, maybe someone I know could benefit from this particular essential oil or this particular practice or this particular diet, don't hesitate to share, because someone's sharing this information with you and that's how you're growing. And we only grow by passing on information. All right, I'm going to switch now to the second topic I wanted to talk about today, which is libido. So let's go to page 101 and talk about what the libido and our microbiome have to do with one another. Now, there was this experiment with flies and attraction, and I'm not going to read that part, but just to set up this section of the book, what they did was when they wiped out the microbiome of the flies, they no longer were attracted to each other and they didn't want to mate. But when the microbiome was reintroduced into the flies' environment and body, it did stimulate mating practices. So before you accuse me of over extrapolating from flies to humans, and she's talking about this story, I'll put this into perspective. The final microbiota, actually a single species, Lactobacillus plantarum, has apparently altered chemicals that cover the surface of their bodies, essentially sex pheromones. Humans too are influenced by sex pheromones. In a now legendary experiment, female students at the University of Bern in Switzerland were given t-shirts worn by male students in bed and asked to rate them in order of attractiveness. The women preferred the t-shirts of men who had the most different type of immune system from their own. The theory goes that by choosing their genetic opposite, the girls would be providing their offspring with an immune system that can handle twice as many challenges. Through their sense of smell, the girls were scanning the boys' genomes, looking for the best match to be the father to their children. The odors left by the male students on their t-shirts were produced by none other than the skin microbiota. Living under armpits, these microbes convert sweat into smells that float off for better or for worse. Indeed, the sweatiness of the armpits and the groin, and probably the hair that sprouts there, are unlikely to be a cooling mechanism. Rather, they are the human equivalent of the sac wing bat's perfume pouches. And if you look at the way the chapter starts, she gives an outline of an antidote about tadpoles, and then she talks a little bit about bats and bats who have these sacs of pheromones and microbiomes that they carry around, and that is used for attraction. So if you want to go ahead and or behind and go earlier in the chapter, you can read about those stories. There's just too much for me to talk about. I'm giving you little excerpts here. So let's get back to the armpits and the groin and the sweat that's given off. Okay, so it's not to cool the body. It's actually to send off a scent. They are the human equivalent of the sac wing bat's perfume pouches, trapping and concocting the perfect scent. The particular community of skin microbiota that each male student harbored is probably at least partially the result of his genes. If mice are anything to go by, including the genes that determine the kind of immune system he has, the girls, albeit unconsciously, were using the microbiota as a messaging system, alerting them to the most beneficial genetic union. The mind boggles to think of the sheer number of ruinous relationships that might have been brought on by deodorants and antibiotics, not to mention contraceptive hormones. In the t-shirt experiment, female students who were taking the pill apparently reversed their subliminal superpower, as they preferred the t-shirts of men whose immune systems were the most similar to their own. So I've been talking about this for a really long time. I've been very skeptical about women using contraception. I really feel like it's added way too much estrogen into the entire environment. Every woman who takes contraceptive pills that are estrogen or hormone based, when they urinate, those are very small molecules that go into the water supply that cannot be filtered out by the regular city water system or even many filtration systems. And each of us are on a low dose of estrogen every day for many reasons, because of the medications we take, which are estrogen dominant. And I'm not talking about things like hormones for women. I'm talking about all the medications that are on the market today, blood pressure, things for, I was going to say, for your cholesterol medication, even things like pain relievers. All of those have estrogen dominant properties to them. And so we're all being surrounded with a lot of estrogen, more than nature ever intended us to be on. And so I think it's important for us to understand the side effects that come with medication, and also drinking xenoestrogens, plastic bottles, tin cans that are lined with plastics, your food that are shrink wrapped in plastic. All of those things lead to small amounts, but from multiple different places, right? Over time, we started to call them xenoestrogens, which they are, but they're also part of a larger category of things called obesogens. These are those chemicals that disrupt the way your body should work naturally. So now moving on to an essential oil to help combat that, I want to talk a little bit about Blue Lotus. So, Blue Lotus is a new essential oil that's being released by doTERRA. We are the only essential oil company that actually has real Blue Lotus. It comes from a very, very small farm in China where it's exclusively grown and distilled for pure pharmaceutical grade essential oils, right? So these are pharmacokinetic tested for their standard, for their purity, for their potency, for their safety. This is not something that the essential oil industry does. This is something that doTERRA specifically does. That's why we have something called CPTG, certified pure tested grade. Okay, so this is really important for people to realize. Now, Blue Lotus can help reverse some of the damage that can be done by having that fake estrogen surrounding you and disrupting your hormones, disrupting your emotions, and disrupting your feelings of attraction. So many women, after they give birth, say they're no longer interested in their partner. So many women, when after menopause, say they have zero libido whatsoever. So this is something that we can actually work on, and some essential oils are very powerful for that. Now, one of the things you have to understand about essential oils, if you're new, is that essential oils always bring the body into homeostasis. You can't overdose on these. You can't bring your body out of homeostasis or out of balance. You don't have to worry about taking too much or knowing whether you're in balance or out of balance. These are going to be nurturing and restoring, but never overpowering or unbalancing. And so what we can do with this essential oil is, I'm just going to give you another technique, is to roll it on the back of your hand. One of the reasons I say to people to do this is that even when you wash your hands, a lot of times you don't wash the back of your hand. And maybe that's a good thing since we're trying to preserve the microbiome. We tend to wash the inside of our hands, not the outside of our hands. So putting your essential oils on the outside, you're probably going to have them on there longer. Because these are roll-ons, they are mixed with coconut oil, which means that they stay on the skin better and are very nurturing to the skin. A lot of essential oils can be drying to the skin, and when you mix them with coconut oil, you're going to actually not have to worry about that. The other place I would put Blue Lotus is in my scalp, actually, because your scalp is a really great place to put essential oils. It goes right in to the scalp. That's why you have to be careful about what you use in terms of shampoos and dyes and other products. But I just go ahead and roll this right into the scalp. And I find that just the gentle massage can also be very uplifting and settling. I like to go behind my ears, right? I never put essential oils into my ears, but I love to put them behind my ears. And you can see my hair is not greasy because I've been using this. It's just a little bit of oil, and it's going to give your hair a little bit of a shine, which is nice too. Maybe keep those flyaways in place. Another thing you can do with your essential oils is actually put them on the side of your neck. This is another great place. Okay. And this is really going to help. So consider getting some Blue Lotus and using that on your skin microbiome to help balance libido and attractiveness and kind of restore some of the natural microbes. So it will help some of your natural microbes to flourish, right? You're giving your body, your skin, an environment so that these good microbes can flourish. When we cover our skin with things like hand sanitizers and really harsh soaps and alcohol sprays and things that kill everything, what we do is we lose the good when we attack the bad, and we don't want that. So using essential oils preserve the good while attacking the bad. All right, and we're running short on time, but I do want to get to the last excerpt that I wanted to talk about today, which is happiness. So if you look on page 103, it says, how can eating live bacteria make you feel happier? Pleasing one potential mechanism seems to have to do with the chemical that's well known to be involved in mood regulation, serotonin. This neurotransmitter is actually mainly found in the gut, where it keeps everything moving along nicely. But around 10% of the serotonin belongs in the brain, regulating mood and even memory. How straightforward it would be if the ingestion of bacteria simply set up shop in the gut and started pumping out serotonin. But of course, it is not that simple. Instead, introducing live bacteria increases the level of another compound, tryptophan. Now, I think we all know about tryptophan when we talk about feeling sleepy after eating a big turkey dinner at Thanksgiving. But tryptophan actually has a lot more useful things to do in the body. What does it do? It goes into the blood. The little molecule is paramount importance for happiness as it is converted directly into serotonin. Tryptophan converts directly into serotonin. That's important for us to know. Indeed, depressed patients tend to have lower tryptophan levels in their blood. And countries where the population as a whole eats a diet lower in tryptophan, which is found in protein. So if you want to know where to get your tryptophan, you're going to have to eat protein. Have higher rates of suicide. So low tryptophan, higher rates of suicide. Good to know. Maybe a little turkey is all your depressed teenager needs. So I'm not trying to minimize depression, but I am saying we can do some basic things to probably set ourselves up for greater success. Even if possible, to make people profoundly, though temporarily, depressed by depleting their bodies of tryptophan supplies. Less tryptophan means less serotonin means less happiness. What's fascinating, though, is that an increase in tryptophan that added bacteria brings about is not because they make it, but rather because they prevent the immune system from destroying the body's supply of it. This points to an extraordinary idea, one that has gained ground not only among microbiologists, but in other fields as well. It is becoming increasingly clear that just as with allergies and obesity, depression can be brought on by a malfunctioning immune system. But I will get back to that. First, I want to tell you about another mechanism by which bacteria can make you happy. It involves the vagus nerve, a major nerve that originates in the brain and extends all the way down to the gut, branching off at various organs along the way. Nerves are like electrical wires that carry tiny electrical impulses along their lengths and give instructions or sense changes. In the case of the vagus nerve, its impulses carry information about what the gut is doing, what's being digested, and how active it is, and so on. The special thing about the vagus nerve, though, is that it informs the brain about what we call gut feelings, butterflies in the stomach, knowing in your gut that something is wrong, and bowel loosening nervousness really do begin in the gut. The brain simply gets informed of them by electrical impulses shooting up the vagus nerve. So perhaps it shouldn't come as a surprise that electrical impulses shooting up the vagus nerve to the brain can also make you happy. Doctors can even treat patients with severe depression, incurable by chemical or behavioral means, by hijacking the system. In this treatment called vagal nervous stimulation, a tiny device is implanted into the neck of the patient. Extended from the device are wires that the surgeon carefully wraps around the vagus nerve. A battery-powered generator inserted into the chest provides an electrical impulse that stimulates the nerve. Over weeks, months, and years, patients steadily become more cheerful, buoyed by their happiness pacemakers. So I really love that too. So that ends the third section I wanted to talk about today. And my last essential oil roll-on is Shinrin-yoku. Shinrin-yoku is a brand new blend of essential oils. It means forest bathing. And when we talk about happiness, we really do ground ourselves and get the most fulfillment by connecting with nature, which is where the human being was designed to live. So the more artificial our environment, as clean, easy, and comfortable as it becomes, does disconnect us from the world that we were intended to live in, that being the natural world. So I do encourage people every day, if they can, take off their shoes, walk barefoot in your grass, as long as it's not covered with pesticide and really dangerous fertilizers. Find a clean place on the earth to walk on and reconnect. Maybe it's a beach. It's not a sidewalk. It's not concrete. It has to be natural. Please make sure it's safe and free of debris, because we don't want anyone injuring themselves. You don't have to walk long distances. And in fact, one of the best things you can do to actually reconnect yourself and cleanse your entire body really is to spend 5 minutes and put your feet right on the ground and then go between looking at a horizon point for a few seconds and then something closer. So it's just a very easy exercise that anyone can do, and it's free. Anybody can do this. You can even do this in the winter, they said, as long as you're not prone to frostbite and you don't have severe circulation issues, because this only really takes a few minutes. So you could even do this standing in the snow. This is what I've read. I haven't tried it yet. So I will let you know if I do this in the winter. But the cool thing about Shinrin Yoku is you can actually bring this inside and do it in between these times of you standing outside with your feet on the ground, looking at a horizon point. And a horizon point could be a tree that's, excuse me, off in the distance. And then a near point, which could be another tree that you're standing next to, or a dandelion growing in the grass, right? But the idea is that your brain is shifting from a faraway point for a few seconds to a closer point for a few seconds. And this resets your brain. This resets your vagus nerve, and it resets your emotions so that you can focus better. So Shinrin Yoku in between, when you're not outside, kind of resetting yourself. And by the way, the best time to do this is when you're changing tasks. So let's say, for example, you're getting off of work and then you have to go home and you have a lot to do. If you can just peel in 1 or 2 minutes and do this exercise. And if you don't have time to take off your shoes and your socks and stand in the grass, then just keep your shoes and socks on and do the exercise of looking at the horizon point and looking at the close point and really observing the natural world around you. This is part of forest bathing and Shinrin Yoku. And then when you want to do this and you can't get outside to look at that horizon point, you can even do this inside. So for example, I'm in my room right now. I can look at the door, and then I can look at my book, and then I can look at the door, and I can look at my book, right? And that's all you need to do. And then you take your Shinrin Yoku and horizontally across the back of your neck, I'm going to turn around so you can see this, hopefully. You're just going to gently kind of create a stripe. And I like to go up. It almost feels like you have a bit of a piano wire here in the back of your neck. And if you can go lower with it, you don't have to go all the way down your back, but just try to do this for a few minutes and see if you start to feel yourself a little bit more grounded. Now, some people will sneeze, some people will yawn, some people will find their breath kind of leveling off, some people will feel their shoulders relaxed, but those are the types of responses you want from your vagus nerve. And I have to tell you, this is the most intoxicating scent that I've ever smelled. So what I like to do is actually just paint a little stripe under my nose so that I can keep smelling it for the next few moments, at least until my body gets used to it and I don't smell it anymore, but the other people around me can. Okay, so I hope that it has been helpful for you. Just to review, we learned about the microbiome today in 3 specific areas from chapter 3 of this beautiful book, 10% Human by Alana Collin. We talked about brain development, especially in the first 3 years of life, and the oil thinker that you can use to improve your brain function. We talked about the libido and how it is tied to the microbiome, especially the skin microbiome, and that sweat that's given off from the groin and the armpits may actually be not there to cool your body down, but is there to send off sense of attraction so that you are connected to the people that serve your immune system the greatest. And thirdly, we talked about the vagus nerve and, oh, sorry, I will go back. And we talked about Blue Lotus and how to use Blue Lotus for your libido. And then thirdly, we talked about grounding the vagus nerve and happiness and the microbiome and using Shinrin Yoku, the Japanese oil of forest bathing, to get your vagus nerve back on track, which is also going to help with the health of your microbiome. Next week, we will dive into chapter 4. And remember, we only touch the surface of these chapters. We don't get to see and talk about every single solitary thing that she does in her book. So please, please, please make sure that you read the chapter in full. Go back at your leisure and make sure you get all of the bits that are so important with this book. And then finally, I just want to let you know you're on the right track. Thanks for coming with me. We can do this together, and I will see you next week.